I actually just got really curious because we were talking so much about how you guys build your own data infrastructure inside Carpe. So I actually want to go super deep dive into that. But to start and give some context to everybody, could you give just a little background on the founding story, how you guys started this, where you met, and also just to paint some context around when you started, like what kind of life stage were you in? Did you get funding? Did you bootstrap it? Were you eating ramen? Give us some of those goodies.
You want to take this or you want me to?
There you go.
So I had really sweaty hands and in high school, and there was nothing to do about it. So got to college, grew up in Georgia, went to North Carolina, I went to UNC Chapel Hill. My co-founder Carpe went to Duke. We were in this cross-campus scholarship program that brought the two schools together. So we were living in New Orleans summer after our freshman year, and it was hot and humid as hell. And we were like, we are sweating like crazy. We have to do something about this. So we started talking about this idea to make this dumb little like anti-sweat lotion for our sweaty palms. And that turned into our entire life. And so basically, fast forward, what ended up happening was, we made something that worked extremely well for us. We launched it online on our website and on Amazon. We were doing other things in college at the time. I was going to do medical school, was doing the whole pre-med track, studied chemistry. Casper was going to get a PhD in computer science. He was doing physics and comp sci, way smarter than me. And everything changed when we just started getting amazing feedback from customers. People were reaching out, dermatologists and customers were saying like, hey, this product has really changed my life. Do you have something for my sweaty feet, my groin sweat, my boob sweat, my face sweat, my underarm sweat, because I've tried everything out there and nothing's worked for me. And that's when we really saw the opportunity to go beyond a single product and really build a brand focused on effective sweat care for everywhere. And so that's what we've done. That's what we're doing. Right now, we're really leaning into this idea of smarter sweat protection. We just make stuff that works better. We, as Nick mentioned, sold the company to private equity about 6 months ago, have stayed on, will continue to stay on because we're having a lot of fun and we see a massive opportunity for Carpe to be the number one antiperspirant brand in the US. So that's what we're going after.
You were doing pre-med, and Casper, you were doing comp sci?
Physics and comp sci, yeah.
Are you sure you guys aren't Indian? All right. So when you were just starting out and building the brand, like what was your KPI as we start to think about data now? Was it, for me, when I started my company, it was making payroll and making sure that went through. Like what were the KPIs that you looked at early on?
Yeah, the single biggest, well, actually, three.
We didn't have KPIs early on.
Yeah. Are we selling stuff? Three quick questions. So first, or three quick points. The first is like Triple Whale, North Beam on their own are entirely useless. The second point is that to survive in today's ecosystem, to sell anything on the internet, having some form of analytics and a data infrastructure is just you have to have it to exist. It's table stakes. It's not like a differentiator anymore. You just have to have it. And the third is, this is more of a curiosity. Who here, can you raise your hand if you use a post-purchase survey to drive your kind of main decision-making for cross-channel allocation of spend? Wow.
Yeah, see, you're smart. I knew you were smart at the morning panel.
I expected more.
You have to.
Okay.
Like literally everything else is lies.
So basically, and we can get into the depths of like why we do that and how we built everything, but to answer the question around KPIs, like we are basically trying to solve three main problems. The first problem was how do we get a true new customer CAC? That is like top three metrics we look at every single day. In order to get a true new customer CAC with a lot of sales across our website and Amazon, that's really difficult because you're getting a ton of new customers on Amazon and you need to figure out who of those people have already bought on your website, who haven't, who actually on Amazon is new versus returning. That on its own is hard. And so, but you have to do that to get a true CAC. The second thing is you have to understand how does Meta drive Amazon new customer acquisition relative to TV, relative to TikTok. And they have different multipliers, right? Like TV, we're assuming 2 new customers on Amazon for every 1 new customer on our website, versus Meta is like 0.8. And you can back test into all of these things, just model out, and this is like really, really key. So anyways, that's kind of jumping ahead, but that was a really big problem that we needed to solve. So, because it's kind of true new customer CAC, then it's basically per channel CAC efficiency, and then it's, every third-party attribution platform is wrong. So how do you build something that's independent and unique to your brand, that's telling you a true story that you can actually allocate spend effectively across channel, across Meta and TikTok, and within channel. So we call it like inter-channel allocation, Meta versus TikTok versus TV, and intra within Meta. And to make inter-channel decisions, we use exclusively a post-purchase survey extrapolated kind of new customer count combined with that Amazon lift multiplier to get a per-channel CAC. That's how we allocate across channels, move spend up and down or cross, and then within channels, just to push into one creative versus another. That's where we use Northbeam. But like, if Northbeam says TikTok's at a 0.2 ROAS and Meta's at a 0.4, that means nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. The numbers are meaningless. That does not mean I need to put more money into Meta. It's completely irrelevant. It's Northbeam, we found, is really only relevant within a single channel. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you're basically trying to understand the incrementality factor of different channels based on post-purchase data?
Precisely.
And you mentioned new customer cost was one of the main KPIs. What were some of the others that you looked at?
Yeah, so we basically look at new customer CAC, daily spend, and new customer subscription rate. So those are the 3 kind of best predictors.
Well, because those are the most variable. But like, I think you need to start. I think there's no like KPIs everybody needs to be looking at, right? I think you need to start by looking at what is actually your strategic goal with the business. And in 99% of cases, I think that comes down to something about top line and bottom line, right? There might be niche examples where you really don't care about top line and bottom line for some strategic reason. You're just trying to really boost new customer count because you're about to go pitch to Target and you want to say, we got like 100,000 new customers last month. But for most businesses, it's some combination of top line and bottom line targets. And I think you want to back solve from there for what it's going to take for you guys to reach those top line and bottom line targets. And in most cases, it's going to be something about, I think in the past, we were very focused on average order value and customer acquisition costs, so AOV and CAC. And as the business evolved and we realized we've got a high retention product because it's antiperspirants, it's something that once people start using and start liking, they're going to keep using. We're much more of an LTV business, right? So we shouldn't just be looking at that initial first purchase AOV. We used to optimize everything around maximizing that first purchase AOV. So, we'd be first order profitable. We realized like, okay, our business can count a lot on second, third, fourth purchases. So we started looking at LTV. One of the things that is implicit in what David said about performance between channels is you're going to get different LTVs or you're going to get different LTV kind of multipliers on your initial average order value depending on the customer acquisition channel, depending on customer demographics, all sorts of different things. And so you not only are getting different CACs based on, not only can you sustain different reported CACs per channel that you're getting from like Northbeam, that you're getting from the post-purchase survey before you take into account Amazon lift, but you can sustain different CACs because you're going to ultimately get different LTVs from different channels. So we can get into the specifics of what we're looking at in terms of like LTV, whether it's 2-month, 3-month, 4-month LTV. That also is like depends on your business goals. How much cash can you afford to float? Because let's say you are super cash rich and you're like, look, I'm just looking at ultimate overall profitability and I'm okay, if we are in the red on any given customer for a few months, as long as we break out and we become super profitable after 6 months. So it's like, okay, we just need to be break even per customer after 6 months, and then LTV needs to keep going to the roof from there. That's a very different strategic place to be rather than like, we're super low on cash, we're trying to bootstrap, we need to be profitable within 1 month. It's okay if like customers stop gaining a lot of value after 1 or 2 months, but we need to optimize everything around getting that cash conversion cycle, getting that money back from customers that we invested in marketing after 1 or 2 months. I hope people are sort of following because I'm speaking in a lot of generalities, but what I'm trying to say is like, there's no same, a lot of us are in similar boats, but not in the exact same boat. So there's no like North Star metrics that every single person here should be following. And I think sometimes people get caught up in looking at, oh, what's your CAC, what's your LTV? And I'm like, that isn't necessarily like apples to apples between businesses. Like you need to understand what matters for your business. And then, okay, so it's like you've got your big strategic metrics, and then you start backing into, okay, we're going to be looking at 3-month LTV and CAC. And then you need to start thinking about how do we actually accurately get those. And you can't settle for like, this platform is telling me this is what the CAC is, so that's what I'm going to take, right? This isn't about like getting a number so that you're satisfied that you've got a number, you're checking the box. This is like live or die for your business. You need to get the right number. And so to David's point, like we're not going to trust what the platforms are saying. We're not going to trust what Northbeam is saying. It's because we found that those numbers don't actually tie out to the reality on the ground. When we take all the math and see it at the end of the month, we're like, hey, this isn't lining up with what the accountant is saying we got for top line and bottom line. So then we take a step back and we're like, why is it? And it often comes down to, the platforms obviously want to over-report acquisition to their own benefit. Privacy regulation means that nobody's tracking perfectly. So then we start thinking, okay, so how can we get to a ground source of truth? And at the end of the day, the one thing that anything that's fully in our control is going to be a better ground source of truth. And a post-purchase survey is a lot more in our control than whatever weird pixel attribution Northbeam or Meta is doing, regardless of how they claim they're attributing. We don't actually see the math that they're using. We don't actually see all the code that they're running, right? So with a post-purchase survey, it's really simple. We control the options. We know how many customers are answering or not answering, and we know what their answers are, and then we can extrapolate those answers. And there's a naive assumption of like, okay, let's extrapolate linearly. So let's say 30% of people answer. Half of those people say, I came from Meta, and half of those people say I came from TikTok. You might also want to ask yourself, like, what's the actual question? Like, where were you just now? When did you first hear about Carpe? Or like, where were you when you decided to buy Carpe? And so, that question is going to depend, that's going to change the answer. And then that extrapolation from like, let's say 30% of people are answering to 100% of your customers, it may not be a linear extrapolation. Let's say your TikTok audience is younger and I don't know, maybe younger people care less about surveys or they're more ADD. So they're not going to stick around for the surveys. So maybe, more proportionally of the Facebook people are answering. So even though you're getting 15% saying Facebook, 15% saying TikTok, the reality is like you've got 60% of people coming from Facebook and they're just less likely to answer, and 40% of people coming from TikTok. And, I could keep going about all these complexities and all these exceptions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's an ever-evolving process. Like you need to be constantly challenging your metrics and thinking about, okay, how could this be wrong? How can we test this in other ways? David brought up like testing Amazon Lift because that was a big thing that we were missing when we were just looking at what ads were driving performance on the website. And you need to keep trying to get to a better and better source of truth for your business because that is going to determine whether you win or lose. And you need to keep tying it back to your ultimate strategic objectives, not just like, hey, let's get a better CAC because you might be getting a better CAC and much worse LTV. Or recently, we really accepted a huge rise in CAC because we were able to start transitioning the business to a much more subscription-first model, which resulted in similar initial order values, much higher CACs, but way, way bigger LTVs. So we actually drove a lot of profitability while increasing CACs. Anyway, some quick examples, yeah.
I'm so confused right now.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to ask you questions as a confused man who didn't make it past Algebra 2, failed it 3 times. How do you find that number? Because you went from a 15% Meta, 15% Google to 60. Basically you understood what the math was to fill the 100% and then apply that factor to the answers you get, and you inserted the ADD factor of TikTok. How do you? So how do you do the math behind it? How do you think about the math behind it? And then secondly is what are you looking at? Are you looking at a dashboard? Is there an app you're using? Did you build a dashboard? What are you talking about?
So quickly, we basically have we use Dacity. Dacity's great, and
I don't think they're a sponsor though. So.
Looker. On top of Dacity. So Looker is like our visualization tool.
This is the OG stack.
Yeah.
It is. So.
Oh boy.
All right. Real quick, what David said, because Nick asked a good question.
You
asked a good question.
Buckle up, everyone.
I had this very specific example, and this is a representative example of like a million ways your data could be skewed. Where I'm like, just because the post-purchase survey is telling, you can't linearly necessarily extrapolate the post-purchase survey, but to David's point, start with that assumption. If 30% of people are answering the post-purchase survey, half of them say TikTok, half of them say Meta, extrapolate that linearly, say 50% of my customers are coming from Meta, 50% are coming from TikTok, and then when you've got nothing better to do and you're like, how can we get even closer to the truth, then start finding ways to challenge that assumption. That comes down the road. Start with like the linear extrapolation in almost everything you do. But if you've got a smart team that's really loving to get into the numbers and get into the analytics, eventually they will challenge it and they'll find ways to test it. And we'll have data that says, hey, TikTokers are less likely to answer this survey. And in fact, we should apply this fudge factor where we multiply when we extrapolate, we multiply the TikTok number by 1.2 and we multiply the Meta number by 0.8 or whatever. And then if you're using one of these out of the box platforms, like, again, they've changed a lot in the last few years, so I don't know the specific capabilities of different platforms, but when we were trying to set up a data stack like 4 years ago, a lot of people were using Glue, a lot of people were using solid apps on Shopify that do reporting, but they might not have the functionality to build in something like this fudge factor. And this is one of a million examples. Like, you can't exactly tweak the data in the way that you know is correct or true for your business. The most common example that I found is defining revenue. Because it's like, okay, some platforms will include tax revenue and revenue. That's not revenue. Some of them will include shipping revenue, and depending on your model, you may or may not want to include shipping revenue as part of your like AOV. And there's all these little considerations, discounts, bundles, whatever. You want to be able to define revenue for what revenue means to you. So we started off from a place of like, we're already spending so much time in Excel doing so many models for our marketing and our analytics that we want a platform where we can basically write custom functions and whatever. And in looking at the landscape, we realized this means we need a full data stack where we can literally get into the code. We can, define the functions that drive the dashboards. And that means we need like a data warehouse and we need ETL into that data warehouse. So like raw data coming in from Shopify and Meta and TikTok and whatever. And then on top of that, we need a BI tool that allows us to visualize the data in the data warehouse and apply like these fudge factors and our own definitions of what revenue is. And out of the box, at the time, there were no tools that fully did this. And we were looking at like, okay, what's the cost to build a data warehouse yourself? And so the ETL alone, we thought was going to cost like tens of thousands of dollars a month. And then Snowflake is fortunately quite affordable. That was going to cost like a few $100s a month. And then a Looker license, depending on how well you negotiate, is anywhere between like a few thousand and $10,000 per month. And then we found Dacity, which like bundles a lot of this stuff together.
The best situation to be in is when the rep says, okay, but you have to sign this NDA if we're going to give you this price.
Yeah, he's a good negotiator.
That's the place you want to be. But basically, like every day, our team will get a daily report, the entire team, automated 6 a.m. of the key metrics from the previous day. Everything that we care about that drives the business.
And we can build these like whatever we want from these reports. And I mean, literally, like we write the functions from whatever data we want and manipulate it however we want. And the nice thing about Dacity is it built like a good default template for it. So not only were we saving a lot on cost, but we didn't need like 2 data scientists to build the entire data structure for us. They had a really good default e-commerce data structure that we were able to build on top of it and customize, to David's point, to our own reports. And we update those frequently now.
So we'll have like daily Looker reports sent to everyone's inbox, daily marketing report with all the key marketing metrics. So people know exactly like, okay, these are the numbers I need to make changes based on. And what this allowed us to do is scale really, really fast and extremely profitably, and also become a top 50 advertiser on TikTok, because back in 2022, 2023, when no one was really talking about post-purchase survey, we were just looking at the data. We were like, all these people, like Northbeam, Triple Whale, they aren't saying that they're coming from TikTok, but they are. Like all these people are saying that
TikTok was grossly under-attributed until you looked at post-purchase survey.
And so those are the kinds of things that having like strong analytics allow you to do. And we just were able to scale really fast and profitably because of that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a graduation from just like analytics out of the box to more business intelligence tools and then creating these custom dashboards. How do you think, or how do you then internally create a process around taking these insights or these numbers and turning them into insights or actions?
Yeah, I think you just need to build a culture, a data-driven culture, right? Like everyone's constantly talking about the numbers and not the fluff. And so, every week we have growth meetings where we're talking about like new breakout ideas based on the data. We're having creative meetings where we're looking at before Motion was good, we had built several years ago an internal tool. That's what we just fucking love, building tools. And we built this insane Google sheet that for all of the thousands of ads that we had made, because we built an entire in-house creative team before it was cool. And we could see for every single ad like what the decay was and where were people dropping off. So then we could intervene and be like, okay, people are dropping off in this part of the ad, but it's like really interesting. Let's change this up, turn it into a winner, and get $50,000 to spend behind that ad. And so it has really just become a part of the culture. And everyone that we've hired, regardless of role, has like a very performance-oriented mindset. Because again, I think that's what it takes to really win today. You just have to be really close to the numbers while also staying creative. And I do have a spiel about creative and AI. We can get to that.
Well, that maybe tie it in here, because one of my questions is like, how can you do this in a more automated way, leveraging AI? There's so many platforms and now APIs or ways to just integrate AI into automations or maybe the BI tools. Like, have you seen any cool examples of that emerging?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. So it's something that I think obviously everybody should try to stay on top of and try to be pushing into your processes, because like you can save so much time and so much busy work doing AI. But like a week ago, David called me about this important legal document in our business, and he's like, I just put this into ChatGPT and like this and this and this and this, and like we need to call our attorneys about this right now. And I'm like, no, ask it about clause 3.2. And he's like, okay, I asks it, and ChatGPT is like, oops, I was wrong. Clause 3.2 solves the thing that I just said is going to blow up your company. So the point is, it's still making a lot of mistakes, right? Even with like O1 Pro and everything. And so for generative AI, when you're making videos or scripts or whatever, ultimately there's always going to be a human in the loop. So it's a great way to quickly get a lot of ideas and stuff like that out. When you're relying on it to do analytics for you, that's a good way to speed up analysis. But you do want to kind of verify with smart analysts what it's actually putting out, because it will still give you like nonsense sometimes.
But our analysts will use, like in our developer, ChatGPT or Claude to help write SQL for Looker, right? So it'll definitely like speed up the process. It also helps like clean up the code, because the code base is an absolute disaster in Looker. But outside of just helping like clean up and refactor, simplify the code and like write it faster, haven't found a ton of immediate applications. But I do, anytime I get an Excel sheet, I'll just pop it in and be like, please tell me all of these answers. And I'm not going to open the sheet. Too lazy.
Okay, amazing. We've got a few minutes to take questions from the audience. Does anybody have right here? First question.
Hi, so my name is Melissa, and I am a data scientist at Roller Rabbit. And I am currently going through, or recently have gone through, the process of setting up a data warehouse. So I can echo all those pain points and screening vendors and setting things up on top of Shopify. And I was wondering if you had any other words of wisdom about like going through this process. I guess I should add, I came from a huge company where I was one of many data scientists, and now I'm one, and kind of going through this whole process. So if there are any other words of wisdom.
Did y'all decide to build it custom or use something like Dacity?
No, we went with a vendor because I'm a team of one. So
vendor to like set it up, or vendor that's going to keep maintaining it?
That's going to keep maintaining it.
That's good. That's like my biggest worry, and that's the other hidden cost if we just like wrote all this ETL ourselves, is like every 5 days Meta's going to change their APIs in some subtle way that breaks all of your data. So you need the vendors that are out there like constantly updating the ETL. I think that's our probably number one word of wisdom for the situation that you're in, is try to stay on top of the tech debt, because it's very easy to like just keep writing, I'm going to write this one additional like line block of LookML or whatever for this one particular use case. And then we've got like 60 definitions of revenue once again. Just go in there and try to refactor every once in a while. And it feels like it's not a productive project, but it really makes the work cleaner and more accurate moving forward.
Next question in the back, Scott.
I love what you were saying about setting the different like ROAS targets based on what you're seeing of like, you know what, TikTok says it's 0.4, Meta's a 0.2, so we're not going to move budget around because your post-purchase survey says something else. How are you today? Because I know earlier it sounds like when you're less channels, like setting those targets, is it within MMM? Is it geo holdout? How are you guys essentially setting the targets to then go and adjust in campaigns?
Well, like post-purchase survey, basically.
Is that still?
Yeah. So
very
I mean,
much
like
post-purchase
we'll
survey?
basically we will extrapolate post-purchase survey with some fudge factors based on tests that we've done to say like, okay, regardless of what the ROAS that TikTok is reporting here, we know that it's actually driving this effective ROAS. So, given the LTVs that we're getting from this channel, we have like a threshold ROAS of like if ads are 0.4 or better, like scale. And if they start to dipping below 0.4 ROAS on this channel, we know that they're actually losing us money.
And so it's all post-purchase. You haven't done any holdouts or looked at.
We've done all of it.
You've done it all.
We
That's
have-
why I guess I
We've
was saying, like,
literally tested
yeah.
every different, and we haven't found anything to beat post-purchase.
But the holdouts sometimes help us like fudge post-purchase into like, okay, we got to give a little bit more weight to these.
The Amazon lift multipliers is a big key.
That's tough. That you can only do with like holdouts, intentional or accidental.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
All right, one more. Right up here in the front.
I just want to know what kind of coffee Casper drinks.
A lot of it. Just a lot of it.
Your passion is
I'll tell you what, if you listen to this recording, because it's being recorded on 0.5, very valuable.
maybe even slower.
I was all over the place. I hope people got something from my rants. Thank you.
Okay, any last question? Awesome.
Maybe a weak one, but if you guys had word of mouth coming in as like a major reason, how do you go about, I guess, impacting that, or what do you do for like referral or programs or whatever?
As in, like, if someone says, I heard from a friend,
Yeah, like how would you try to incentivize that more as a channel if you wanted like more people to do that, or do you kind of say whatever, that's free money?
Like scaling word of mouth?
yeah, so in terms of scaling word of mouth, we really just focus on seeding and making better products. If we make better products, more people will tell their friends about it. We haven't
done
found
tests.
a really effective way of like
Yeah.
incentivizing referral. We tried, but just, not a lot of people want to talk about their deodorant.
Or and especially like the gamified ways of getting people to talk about it don't seem to work. Like there is organic referral when somebody's like, this changed my life, and tells a friend about it who needs the problem or has the same problem. But when we're like, oh, give your friend $5 off, nothing like that's ever worked for our brand, at least.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.